Much. Good God, AI. AI chat's pretty boring. I know we're kind of 3 years into experiencing these things, but my goodness, they go on, and we have to read stuff, and it just makes up text for us, and there's lots more of it. And then we ask it to summarize that, because that's a good idea. And then, it really very much annoys me that we have to go and do a lot of reading of stuff that we just ask to be generated. There's not a lot we get that's visual in this kind of world of AI apps and things like that. About the best is asking it to generate an image, right? This is Gemini's version of generating an image of me at a conference I was last at, and it took its time, obviously. And then when it showed up, it definitely didn't look like the scene I was describing. I was actually in at the time. Go on, Gemini, you can do it. There we go. That's not me. Nobody gives conference talks in the round. That's also weird. But that's about the best thing we got as in terms of visual things in AI applications right now. So all of this stuff is boring. Chat apps are boring. It's just walls of text. Even your coding agents, right? They're off in the background writing files for you, and then they come up with a 30-page description of what they just did, and you're expected to read and understand all of that because you would have read and understood it if you'd been doing it yourself. And honestly, not all interactions are ideal through just typing to another thing on the other side of the screen or by talking to them if you're using voice chat for this kind of stuff. We're actually visual people, right? We want to get hands-on with stuff. We want to see things, understand, and interact with them. And that is not what we get out of a chat application. Things that, that might be examples of this are like shopping, right? If you're ordering clothes, food, or something, booking a hotel, any of that, you kind of want to see stuff. If you're exploring data and you want to visualize things, and I know that some of the agents, some of the existing models kind of had early versions of this. If you're configuring something with lots of options, it's never fun to go through an entire checklist of stuff by answering yes or no questions to your agent. If you're viewing rich media, if you're dealing with real-time data that's actually happening as part of the interaction. It's all very visual, and that's not something that we've been given access to within AI chat today. So today, we're going to talk about how we're fixing that, what we can build, and how we can give users of AI agents a much better and more interesting experience. So yeah, my name is Phil Nash. I'm a developer relations engineer at IBM, and as we said, a Google developer expert, which is a dangerous thing with so many Microsoft people around. Newly an ambassador for the Agentic AI Foundation. I think that's fun because that's quite new. The Agentic AI Foundation was sort of created by Anthropic, by OpenAI, and some other partners in order to kind of house some of the standards that were being developed as part of this. And so initially that was set up to take on control of MCP, the standard, agents.md, and then also Goose, which is an open source agent that was built originally by the people at Block. The Agentic AI Foundation is supporting all of those open source things, and we'll be adding more of those projects as well. If you do want to find me anywhere online, I am Phil Nash, kind of all over the internet. That's the intention there. At IBM, I personally work on open source tooling for AI systems. One of the things we've been working on recently is a tool called OpenRAG. It is an opinionated, agentic, kind of open source stack for RAG applications. So it combines like 3 other open source things. It combines Dockling for kind of document parsing. Dockling's really good at understanding PDFs. It's so good. It includes OpenSearch for search indexing, which is not an IBM open source project, but we did recently join the OpenSearch Foundation, I think, as a platinum partner. And then Langflow, which is a drag and drop editor for agentic workflows. And Langflow kind of runs the orchestration side of OpenRAG and actually allows you to customize the flows yourself within it. So it's a customizable stack, and I think that's really cool. All right. So I assume you're all fans of at least one of the things up here. Is there any, am I missing any agents here that you are using? Shout anything out. Not missing anything, great. Anything you don't know? Is there any of the, I like to point out that, where is it? This one over here, this one is Goose. Goose is that open source agent, as I said, built by Block. And it's actually really kind of cool to use because you can plug it into whatever models you want to and play around with it. And then, of course, we also have over here, that's IBM Bob. Bob is our coding agent that recently kind of became available to the public. If you want to try IBM Bob, you can do free for 30 days, which I think's fun if you've run out of your other tokens, if you've run out of things elsewhere. Give Bob a go. But what's happening here is all these apps are kind of approaching the same problem from different angles, right? They're all still agents, but they're doing slightly different things. But they all have this way to interact with an LLM via a chat interface and let it run tools. That's what they're all doing. I do think these are amazing. When I say that chat is boring, I don't mean it's not amazing. I just mean it's boring. So how do we make these agents more interesting? That's the plan here. Like, how are we going to make things interesting, visual, and interactive? Well, right now we have two different ways that we can add extra capabilities to our agents. It's MCP and skills. They both have their place. I'm not here to have an argument about whether MCP or skills is better or worse or otherwise. MCP and skills both have a place in our agents. They both give agents those tools and behaviors to augment the experience for our users, to achieve other things outside of their existing tool catalog. The MCPs make well-defined tools available to the agent with well-defined parameters, and that's kind of important to it, right? The definitions are what takes up all your tokens when you're adding an MCP server, whereas skills are more into that progressive disclosure of instructions and behaviors to help clients choose whether they want to use them or not. Really useful. And then skills, of course, are often paired with a CLI to help it help an agent achieve further things using those tools. I sort of said there's no argument between MCP and skills here, but what I'm going to talk about for the rest of this is only possible via MCP right now, and I don't think really could be possible at this point with skills. It's not come up. It's not been a part of it. So let's see. What can we do with an MCP server? We have a bunch of options, right? They have tools. That's our bread and butter, like have an agent do something, achieve something outside of just returning text. MCP servers can also provide prompts, which are hints from the server back to the agent to be like, this is how best you can talk to me, and that's quite useful. We've got resources. Resources are like context, they're data, they're static files normally, which are used by the AI. They can use it as information, and we're going to see more usage of that in a minute. And then the sampling, which I don't think is something we actually see used that often right now, and that's where an MCP server can actually say back to the agent, I need you to run some inference for me so that I can take that information and then produce it back to you. It's backwards, MCP backwards, right? It's the server is asking the agent to do something for it rather than the other way around. But outside of these, we don't have a lot right now. But this is where that kind of standardization process and the usage of MCP has gone over the years, is that people want to experiment with what else we can do with MCP servers. And there has been, at this point, actually there's 3 now, MCP extensions that have been created. MCP extensions are officially a part of the protocol now as a way to experiment with other things that we can do with MCP. And so, as I said, like the protocol is being worked on out in the open now by the Agentic AI Foundation. And one of the recent additions to the protocol, only a couple of months ago really, was MCP Apps. What are we saying here? MCP Apps and MCP Tasks. Tasks allow for long-running things to happen on an MCP server. So when you want to have something do something that maybe is going to take an hour's time, or a day's time, or a week, a task is there to exist in the back end and churn away whilst the agent can continue doing other stuff. The idea there is that tasks then can be polled by the agent every now and again to say, are you done yet? And when it is, then it can go and carry on knowing that its task was completed. On the other hand, MCP apps are what I want to talk about today. MCP apps take our world from boring text into interesting worlds of showing people and interacting with the application. They're a way to provide a UI that an MCP host can render and let users interact with as part of the conversation. It's actually a bit of a collaboration. Like, this wasn't invented out of the protocol group in the first place. It was invented by a couple of guys who built up MCP-UI about a year ago. I think they started this project. It was a community-driven attempt to add UI to apps in chat. And because it was not really standardized, didn't really turn up in many of the existing clients. We haven't seen a lot of this yet. I think actually Goose, talking about it being an open source client and wanting to capture the attention of people, I think Goose implemented MCP-UI, but not many others did. Then last October at OpenAI's Developer Day in San Francisco, they announced their Apps SDK. And Apps SDK was, they put UIs in one of the kind of the biggest chat experiences around, right? They put UIs inside of ChatGPT itself. And so the MCP project kind of noticed these two things and decided that, like, if this is big enough for OpenAI to put in place, and if it's exciting enough people in the community to try and build on this, then we should probably standardize it as part of the protocol itself. And so that's a good thing, because we don't want to end up in a situation where if we want to put UIs into chat agents, that we have to build it 4, 5, 6 different ways. Standards are good for us as builders of things like MCP applications and agents, because we only have to implement it one way. Thank goodness. So this is actually what it looked like when OpenAI announced it. This is using Spotify from within ChatGPT. You should be able to talk to it and say, hey, make me a playlist of early aughts, pop punk and ska punk. Yes, OpenAI and Spotify both know me. And right, you get that playlist. You can make that play in Spotify. There's the same one, like I mentioned, for booking and hotels. Booking.com has one of these apps inside of ChatGPT where you can ask it for a hotel somewhere in Copenhagen, in this case, I think I said, let's go. And Booking.com is going to return a whole bunch of information. Like, because if you ask this and it was just a text-based format, it would just be like, hey, you should get this hotel. But if you can go look at the rooms, if you can go experience where the thing is, if you can go dig deeper into it, as well as see the text response from the agent, you can actually, go and look at the pictures there. See more information about it. We have this kind of experience, a visual experience where you can understand what you're looking at, not just have to read about it. So, MCP apps, how do they actually work? Well, good news is, first up, I know we've talked a bit about security already today. These are a sandboxed web application. So they get sat within their own iframe inside of the agent, so they're not really capable of reaching outside of the agent, or reaching outside of its sandbox and impacting any other part of the program. It is served up as a resource. So I mentioned MCP resources earlier as kind of static bits of code. In this case, it's an HTML resource, which then can get served up inside this iframe sandbox. And then the MCP app itself, which is running inside that HTML, inside that web application effectively, actually interacts with the agent and with the user via the existing tools and MCP server that it is part of. So it's not some kind of wild application that's then you're just running a web browser inside your chat application. It interacts via the MCP server itself and via the chat, so that this interactive experience that we can build into this doesn't just become a one-off little sandbox. It's actually part of the ongoing chat between you and the agent. So how it works, so if the user triggers an MCP tool when talking with the agent, the tool response then comes with a link to the resources, to a UI resource, to say, hey, you can render this if you want to, as kind of that part of the extension of the MCP protocol. The host can then render the resource inside that sandbox iframe, and the app connects to the host. So there is a JavaScript library which you install, which allows or makes it easy to then connect back to the host and communicate back and forth with it. Let's see that quickly in action. Let's go to, oops. I have VS Code here, I have GitHub Copilot, and I have a thing on the screen, go away. I've got VS Code here. VS Code and GitHub Copilot is one of the supporters of this MCP Apps extension so far. And so I am going to talk about it. And I've built a very simple Hello World example of this to start with, to just show what we're going to get out of here. So if I can say, let's use your Hello World tool to say hello to AgentCon Perth. And that should So Copilot likes to make to-do lists about this kind of stuff, which is always fun. It's thinking about it, setting up its task. And it should eventually just render a very simple hello world display. It should be in red, which will show. There it is, haha, cool. So that red bit there is a very simple bit of HTML that is sitting inside that sandbox and working. So it's run this hello world MCP server, which did return some text just saying hello AgentCon26 as well. But it's rendered this thing, and it's kind of the simplest thing I could think of. And then, of course, we actually get the response because it uses that tool, it gets a response from the tool, and then the chat has to say more as well. So it's going to say, hey, hello, AgentCon26. But we got ourselves a thing. And what I want to show is how that works. And we'll do so by taking a look at the code. So first up, this Hello World MCP app has a tool definition. As is what we get in every one of our MCP applications, we always have to define our tools. And we do so with this like JSON schema style declaration. But the interesting and different part here is that we have at the bottom this meta UI resource URI addition. So it's under this underscore meta tag. It's ignored by any agents that do not implement the MCP extension or the MCP Apps extension. It is, but it's right there if you're ready to do that. So you return this and go, hey, by the way, if you want to show something, you can use this resource URI over here for a UI. Next up, we get the, that's, reminding myself what I'm doing here. That's the definition of the tool. That is the input schema for the actual function itself, right? So this is the JSON schema style thing. In this case, this is no different to what you'd be doing with any other MCP app. This is just saying, here are the parameters that my function, this tool requires in order to run. And the hello world one just says, hey, we want a name, the default is world. We're going to show that. Cool. That's nice and easy. Then we've got the actual function itself. Now, hello world, not a very difficult program to write. And so in this case, and again, no different to what you do if you were just writing a tool on its own. We get the name out of the parameters and return it. Cool. But then this is the resource URI. This is the HTML resource that I gave it access to. So we've got some HTML here, which in this case is just rendering an H1 with a color of red, a bold font weight, and in this case, it's linking to a script. Now, this is how I built it, but I've actually got it's built on using Vite. So ultimately, it wraps the entire JavaScript and HTML all into like one single package to make it easier to load. But the JavaScript on the other side, this is where it gets interesting. This is where it imports that imports the library that the MCP project has created that allow you to connect to the app and connect back to the agent. And so in this case, we're doing a little bit of HTML stuff, like grabbing the HTML, the H1 element. Then we call on app.connect, which is going to connect that two-way between the sandbox and the agent itself. And then we can listen for events. And in this particular case, in this first case, we're just listening for the event tool result. So this is actually getting the result from asking the tool to run this miniature Hello World program that we wrote already. And when it gets that result, it allows it to write that onto the HTML page as well. So it's a static HTML page. We've not got a server side that is like generating all the HTML each time. We've got a static HTML page, but our JavaScript connects, it listens for the tool result, then it can update the page, update that visualization with the information it has. In this case, it's just the name or the hello AgentCon26 string, and that's what we saw. We can do things that are more complicated than this, though, of course. So if I go back to the demo, we can see that, so that's what we got out of that. We are just listening for the thing, but we've got something more complicated. So what I can do, no, oh yes, like I said, Copilot loves its to-do lists. Send the greeting, it's done it. If I take a quick look, I did want to show, so I'm going to use OpenRag as the backend for this. I've built my own custom MCP server for it, although it does come with its own server. And OpenRag really is just, it's another agent, it's another chatbot that allows you to talk to things, it has suggestions of what you might want to say, and it has a place to add your knowledge. Currently has a bunch of knowledge, inside it, which is about itself, about OpenRag, about Dockling, and also earlier I put in the entire text to Alice in Wonderland. So that's OpenRag, but I have its MCP server set up, and so I can do something like, say, search OpenRag for information about the models that Dockling uses to parse PDFs. It's kind of one of the magical bits of Dockling, is that it has been trained in multiple different ways, multiple different little models that all come together to reformat text from PDFs into an actual coherent document. All right, so as I said, Copilot does love to plan things and to-do list things, and we're going to allow it to do that. It's querying OpenRag. Oh, it's only going to get 5 results because it's confident it can find out information in that time, apparently. So now it's running that in the background. Oh, there's its information. Haha. Calm down. That is the approved tool result. Go. You searched it. Well, hold on, what did you do? This is always fun, isn't it? It looks like it searched it, but it's decided not to use its UI. That's cool. You're supposed to use the UI, though. Let's make a new search, just a new session just to see what's happening. That's fun. It has never done that before. Never work with children, animals, or agents on stage. So it might ask me permission again. I'll add to do, yep. There we go, cool. So now it's, right, it's done what I expected it to do this time, which is give me my interactive search results. And so these are the search results it originally got from the Dockling models parse PDFs, Dockling PDF parsing models. Good query there, mate. And this is GPT 5.5 mini behind the scenes, so we can blame anything on that. And so we've got an answer from it, but we have this interactive thing. So if it turns out that I didn't get the information that I believe is in the knowledge base somewhere, we can go and search things again. So I can be like, what about DocLayNet? That's definitely a thing. And so that interactive form there, it's not going directly, it's not just an XHR request, it's not just a fetch request to the web. It is going through the tool. It is going through the same search tool that already exists on the MCP server. It's using the same stuff that it has underneath. Yeah, DocLayNet is a set of good stuff, a set of models, set of training data. And so obviously we got this answer out of it. We got Dockling parse, PDF, table form is another thing it does. And we got that example out of the results. But now we've done this extra search, it hasn't sent that back to the information yet. It hasn't sent that back to the page yet. What I can also do is be like, hey, how about some completely different information, like about the Queen of Hearts, for example. And that's going to go get stuff from, yeah, my Alice in Wonderland PDF. Excellent. And another kind of thing you can do here is when you're interacting with these things and you want to send information back to the chat, because that hasn't added this to the context yet. We can say, what's the most interesting thing that we can add to our context here? Actually, I'm just going to go with this top one. So I can just choose to add that to the context. That is, again, just saying, hey, we've got this information, we're going to put it into the context. And you can kind of see it's small because my the text here, but there's a little search result added just there. It's going, yes, we can use that. And so using that search result added, I can be like, how many soldiers were there? 10, it's 10. It should be able to answer that directly from the search result that we gave it. 10 soldiers, thank you. And that's the information we added to it. We can actually go beyond that, and I didn't build it into this application, that we can actually have our UI send messages back to the chat. So we can interact with it, and it can send on messages back to our chat and continue the conversation. And so maybe search results aren't the greatest of examples for this. It's just the tool I happen to be working with right now, so building my own MCP server around it was the easiest thing to do. But I do think it's interesting that we have this capability to interact with our data, interact with something that's slightly outside of our agent loop, but that we can put back in and play around with. Again, most of this kind of stuff is just powered by those underlying connections to the MCP server. So sending a message to the chat is just saying, hey, yeah, send this back to the chat. Take this, put this context into the chat is great. Use the tools we can use the tools that are available from the MCP server. Oh no. There we go. Cool. I do think it's important to over-iterate again that interaction is always proxied via the host, so that the model can take part. So we can send messages, we can add context to it. This is not supposed to be a UI that sits outside of the world of the agent. It's supposed to extend, add on capabilities to the agent and keep it as part of the conversation. And so they have, further abilities. Like I said, we can call those server tools. We can send messages back to the chat using information or whatever you've created from it. You can send just content to the chat. That's what we saw from my search there. We just added extra context. You can request a completion from the chat again, so that's sampling again from MCP servers. The MCP-UIs can do that as well. You can load external content and scripts and resources based on a CSP. So it's not entirely stuck to being the HTML file that you built the first time. If you think back to, say, the Spotify or the Booking.com examples that ChatGPT showed off, they came with images, they came with other stuff. And so as long as you have a content security policy that says, yes, you can reach out and load other resources from here, you can include that kind of stuff as well. And a last thing that's sort of important to note, that you can have open links and download files, because again, that's something that the sandbox would take control of. But if you can request to open a link or request to open a file from the agent, it can choose to allow you to. It can also choose to not, in case it's a malicious link or something that you don't want to be opening. Support for MCP apps right now is actually fairly widespread. It's available in Claude and Claude Desktop, but not Claude Code, of course, because that's just in the terminal. We're not rendering HTML UIs to our terminals yet. It's obviously there in VS Code with GitHub Copilot, as we've seen there today. It's in Goose. It's in that open source agent, as well as Postman. MCP Jam, which is, I think, a way to test and play around with MCP servers, which is a really useful tool for that. Orchestra is another agent that, honestly, I've never heard of or used. And ChatGPT, whilst it initially created kind of its own version of this, you can build ChatGPT UI apps using the MCP Apps specification. If you would like to know more about building your own MCP apps and how to bring your UIs and interaction into the agent experience, first up, the MCP protocol site is the center of documentation for this. But I think more importantly, if we are going to talk about skills, you can add the Model Context Protocol's Apps skill, which will just tell your agent how to build them, and you don't even have to know. So why do we learn things anymore? I don't know. But really, I think what I'm asking for, what I think we should do here is, we need to give humans, we need to give us the tools to be more interactive with our agents. If you're building visualizations, if you're building shopping, if you're building anything like that, give the human on the other end a chance to interact with that and have an actual experience rather than just a block of text. I want you to make chat less boring. That's what I'm here for today, and I hope you can take this away and make things more interesting inside of our agents. Before I go, I think I'm running out of time. I do curate an AI newsletter for developers who are building with AI, and it would be awesome if you subscribe to that. It is handwritten. I don't get something to generate this. Every link that I share there, I think is actually important, and I think that you would like to read. And so if you'd sign up, that'd be amazing. If you do at all, I'm still taking pictures. Sorry about that. If you're at all interested in OpenRag and building your own open source customizable stack, or getting involved in the open source project itself, because it is still being built. It is at version 0.5 right now, although it also just released as a project on IBM Cloud. So you can go buy an OpenRag if you want to, but also it's open source, so you can just get involved in the project because it's genuinely quite cool. So we'd love if you got out, checked out OpenRag as a project and dropped a star on GitHub, whatever. And then finally, if you want to reach me, again, that's me. My name's Phil Nash. I'm a developer relations engineer at IBM, and it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you.